She was afraid I was lying, and apparently really needed to be sure, even though all she had to do was come closer. I picked the table by the window not because it was bright, but because I could see who was coming. An old cafe smelling of ground coffee and something bitter. Like people still smoked here, though it's been banned for at least 10 years. I came early, 15 minutes ahead. Emily was 20 minutes late. As always, I counted. Minutes? Shadows on the floor. How many times the waitress walked by, moved my glass around, played with a napkin. Everything felt familiar until she showed up. Tanned, messy-haired, with that same backpack, where she once drew the letter E with a marker. And that laugh aloud, wild, familiar. She ran up and hugged me tightly. No questions. No hi. As if we'd just seen each other yesterday. As if there hadn't been 2 years and 1,000 kilometers between us. And something inside me let go. Tightened in my chest and then released. I led her to the table, took off her coat, ordered her a feta salad. Everything just like always. And in that always there was something comforting. As if life could return what was lost. If you really wanted it back. At some point, Emily grabbed my hand suddenly like a child. She spoke loudly. About Dad. About missing Italy. About new friends. I listened. And laughed. Not politely, genuinely. For the first time in a long while. She laughed so loudly, heads turned from nearby tables. And I didn't care. I didn't know that at that very moment outside the window, Rachel was standing. She didn't come in. Just stood there. Coat open. No hat. Wind tugging at her hair, but she didn't move. Just watched. I didn't see her. Emily was showing me something on her phone. The waitress brought dessert. I nodded. My gaze never caught the street. And that's a shame. Rachel didn't text that evening. Not a single word. Didn't ask who the woman was. Didn't call. She just disappeared. As if she understood everything. Without a single explanation. Even though nothing had been said aloud. If Rachel had walked in that day, she would have heard. That's Emily. My sister. She just got back. If she had come closer, she would have seen the 2 rings on Emily's fingers. The same pendant we gave her on graduation day. She would have heard her call me Snotnose. That voice you only use with people who remember. What you were like in 5th grade. And how you cried over a broken bike. But Rachel didn't come in. Didn't call. Didn't ask a single question. And that was the scariest part. The phone was silent. Rachel always texted. Even when she was mad. Even when she didn't want to talk, she still wrote. Did you get there? How did it go? The keys in the vase. Little phrases where care slipped through the cracks. This time nothing. Only silence louder than any words. I came home later than usual. Emily stayed at the hotel. I insisted. I wanted her to appear in our home. Not as an afterthought. Not in passing. I wanted Rachel to see us hugging. Laughing. To see me whole again. To understand. I hadn't forgotten how to be happy. The hallway smelled of cinnamon. Rachel only baked in 2 cases. When she was worried. Or when she was angry. I couldn't tell which it was now. Her mug was on the kitchen counter. White, with a worn pine tree print. No steam. Long since gone cold. The cookies were still on the tray. Not arranged. Not stored away. As if everything had stopped mid-sentence. I opened my mouth to call her. And couldn't. Something in the air had already changed. As if the house was holding its breath. Rachel came out of the bedroom silently. Her hair was dry, not after a shower. Just dry. Her shoes were by the door. Not in their place. She always put them in the closet. Always. I said. Emily flew in. I wanted it to be a surprise. She nodded. As if I'd told her gas prices went up. No surprise. No interest. Not even irritation. Just emptiness. We ate dinner in silence. I ate out of politeness. She barely touched hers. The fork scraped the plate. Like it belonged to someone else. All I could hear was the ticking of the clock. I usually never noticed it. When I reached for her plate, she said, "Are you enjoying your time with her?" I didn't realize right away who she meant. No name was said. But her voice, it shook not from hurt, but from exhaustion. I washed the dishes silently. Then asked, "Is there something you want to ask me?" Rachel didn't look up. She only whispered, "It doesn't matter anymore," and went to the bathroom. Closed the door just slightly louder than necessary. Didn't slam it, no, but enough that the air trembled. Enough for me to understand. Between us now is the sound of that door. And it's louder than all the words we didn't say. I stayed alone in the kitchen. The tea had gone cold. Cinnamon overpowered every scent. And I thought, this is the point of no return. Not a scream. Not a slap. Not a scene. But silence. When everything is still intact. But inside. Already empty. Rachel said she was working late. Calmly. Evenly. Too evenly. She used to have layers in her voice. Irritation, hurry, a hint of guilt. Now silence, pulled so tight it rang. And I started noticing the slips. Not in her behavior. In the feeling. As if she was there. But behind glass. As if every move was half a tone softer, half a second slower. The next morning, Rachel left earlier than usual. Didn't wake me. Didn't kiss my forehead. The way she used to. Even on the coldest mornings. She just took her keys. The door clicked shut. And a pause followed. Long. Echoing. I didn't want to nitpick. Wasn't looking for signs. I was trying to hold on to normal. But when a scent passed through the kitchen, ooh. Sickly sweet. Foreign. I froze. She hadn't changed her perfume in ages. This one was different. Like a mask. A veil. I walked up to her scarf. It smelled like candy. Though Rachel never liked sweets. During the day, I opened her online calendar. Not out of suspicion. Out of a need to understand. To find something objective to hold on to. Rachel always planned everything. She lived by timing. But yesterday evening was blank. Today's meeting with a client had no address. No time. Just a phrase. Without meaning. I sat holding the phone like a thermometer reading a fever. And I felt something rising. Not jealousy. Not anger. But fear. A dull, sticky fear you can't run from. I didn't know who she was with. Only that it wasn't me. That evening Rachel came back. Calm. Smiling. She wore the same coat but her hair slightly damp. I glanced at the bathroom instinctively. Dry. Not a drop. I asked. How was your day? She answered quickly. Exhausting. Endless discussions. But her voice held no fatigue. No frustration. Not even a flicker of something real. Only evenness. A rehearsed tone. As if she'd practiced it in advance. And for the first time I thought. She's acting. But for whom? I used to try to be clear. Left notes. Texted if I was late. Let her know when I left, where I was eating, who I was meeting. Not because she asked, because I wanted to be transparent. Now I'd become unpredictable. Not out of revenge. Out of exhaustion. That day I didn't text Rachel at all. Not because I was mad. Just didn't see the point. Words had become like spare change, automatic, unnecessary. I got in the car and drove to Emily. Unplanned. Unannounced. I just wanted to be real with someone. Emily welcomed me without questions. She chattered like before, about Europe, about food, about learning to curse in Italian. Laughed loudly, maybe too loudly, as if filling in the silences I wouldn't fill. I barely spoke. She noticed. Half an hour later, she went quiet. Looked at me the way only she could. Then quietly asked. Are you and Rachel okay? I said yes, too quickly. Too confidently. Like I was trying to convince myself. Emily didn't say anything. Just left that pause, the kind people make when they know they're being lied to. But don't want to press. When she hugged me goodbye, it lasted a bit too long. And only then did I feel it. It was easier to breathe near her. Not because there was less pain. But because there was less pretense. When I got home, it was already dark. A small lamp glowed on the balcony. Rachel was sitting there, wrapped in one of my shirts. The kind she never wore before. Said they were too rough. She didn't turn. But I knew she was waiting. Waiting for a question. Or an explanation. Last night wasn't in her schedule. Wasn't part of our shared time. But I didn't ask. I walked past. Took off my coat. Got a glass of water. The silence stretched like wire. And then, almost to my back, she said. You've changed. I stopped, didn't turn around. I could have answered. Could have pretended I didn't hear. But I said nothing. Because for the first time, I felt power in that silence. Not guilt. Not shame. But a right. To myself. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because of a fight. But because it felt more honest. Rachel didn't come in. Didn't say goodnight. I stared at the ceiling and thought. I used to be afraid of losing us. Now I was afraid of losing myself. Rachel said she'd been at a friend's. I nodded. That was our first real lie. Not because she lied. But because I pretended to believe it. She came home late. In heels. Wearing a shirt I'd never seen before. Hair styled. Makeup fresh. Too polished for meeting Megan. Rachel rarely wore makeup. Only for holidays. Or the theater. And today was Monday. I noticed. And stayed silent. I was with Megan, she said, removing her earrings. Her voice calm. Too calm. As if she had rehearsed. Helping with a presentation. We lost track of time. I placed my cup in the sink. Water ran down the ceramic walls like a slow clock. I see, I said. No accusations. No questions. And in that, everything that needed saying. She stepped closer, ran her fingers along my shoulder. Gently, too gently, as if I were something fragile. Do you really believe me? She asked, almost a whisper. I looked at her, into her eyes. They were damp, not from tears, from anxiety. I said, of course. And in that very second I knew she had slept with someone. Not because I knew, but because my of course sounded too easy. As if I had rehearsed it beforehand. As if it was part of her play, and I was reading my lines. Rachel nodded. No smile. No relief. She went to the bedroom, lay down, turned to the wall. Like a stranger. I didn't follow. I sat by the window, watching my black reflection in the glass. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I looked at her back. At the way she breathed, slow and steady. And I felt, now we had a secret. But not ours. Each our own. She keeps hers on the outside. I on the inside. And it doesn't make it easier. Only emptier. I started waking up before her. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't sleep. Rachel breathed evenly. Slept peacefully. And every morning inside me started with one question. Who are you now? I started noticing strange things. Not loud. Not obvious. The throw blanket on the couch. Not where it usually was. Smelled like someone else's cologne. Warm, sharp. Not mine. Not the one left by guests long ago. This was new. It's fabric softener, Rachel said. Too quickly. Too casually. I wanted to believe. I almost did. But my hands clenched on their own. As if my body refused to play this game. Her phone started lying face down. Even at home. Even in the bathroom. Sound off. Always. As if she wasn't hiding messages. But the possibility of messages. And I, for the first time in my life, crossed the line. Opened it while she slept. Watched the glow light up her face. How she exhaled softly in her sleep. There was nothing on the phone. No chats. No notifications. Empty. And that emptiness didn't smell like order. It smelled like fear. The next day I found myself near a school. Not hers. Not the one where she worked. But the one where her ex's son studied. Rachel didn't know I was there. I hadn't planned it. Maybe I turned the wrong way. Or maybe I wanted to. She was sitting in a car. Alone. But didn't look like someone who ended up there by accident. She was watching the exit. Waiting for someone? I didn't get out. Just sat there. Gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went white. The car felt too small. Time too slow. I didn't know what was worse. That she might be seeing him again. Or that I was now watching. Silently. Secretly. Not as a husband. But as a witness. That evening Rachel asked how my day was. I said, the usual. She smiled. Lightly. Casually. And I realized for the first time, she wasn't speaking to me. She was speaking to the image of me. That was easier for her to see. I still lived in this house. But I wasn't a part of it. I was a surveillance camera. I didn't yell. Didn't break a glass. Didn't punch a wall. I just understood. I am no longer part of this story. It was Sunday. Morning. Sunny. Peaceful. Deceptive. Rachel said she was going to her mother's. Just like that. No occasion. No gifts. No shopping list like she usually made in advance. She rarely visited. Usually just called. 5 minutes. That's all. But now she was going. Silently. Quickly. I nodded. All right. I'll stay with Emily. We wanted to go for a walk. Rachel paused. For a second. As if waiting for jealousy. Or a question. Or an explanation. But I stared out the window. At the wet trees. At the gray light. Didn't even pretend to care. When the door closed behind her, I didn't get water. Didn't turn on music. I sat down on the floor in the hallway. Just sat. Back to the wall. Forehead to knees. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Didn't ask myself questions. Didn't search for a reason. There was only silence. And lightness. I found an old box. From shoes, covered in dust, under the bed, inside our letters, the ones from the beginning, funny, silly, tender. I read lines in voices that no longer felt like ours, as if it had been a different couple, a different home, a different Rachel. She once wrote, "If I ever start to doubt, just remind me how you looked at me that first night." I didn't throw the box away. I just closed it, carefully, forever. And in that moment I understood. I don't want Rachel back. I don't want to explain. I don't want to fix it. I want to get myself back. The version of me who didn't live with guilt over someone else's fear. The one who didn't apologize for secrets that weren't his. That was the point. Not loud, not tragic, but final. Rachel came back calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that only comes after a decision has been made. Or after a lie you've already convinced yourself is true. She walked in that evening with a grocery bag. A pizza box, the kind I loved since college, cheese, basil, nothing extra. "Thought we'd do a movie night," she said, smiling. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to start early. We sat on the couch. I turned on a movie random, loud, but I wasn't watching. Rachel talked about how tired she was, how everything felt heavy, how sometimes you just need to unplug. I listened, but I wasn't listening to her words. I was listening to how she said them. Calmly, too measured, and she chewed slowly, not from enjoying the taste, but as if she were swallowing guilt one bite at a time. And then the phone. The screen lit up. It was just lying between us. I didn't mean to look. It caught my eye on its own. Notification. Photo sent. You and Ethan, twins. Grinning face with smiling eyes. Name not Megan. A man's name. Unfamiliar. And most of all, twins. I froze. Ethan had seen Emily. Thought it was her. Took a photo. Sent it. Rachel had shown him. Rachel was there. Rachel had seen us. And chose not to say anything. She flipped her phone screen down. Fast. 1 second. Silence. Too long to be innocent. It's just a friend, he got confused, she said. Too fast. Too smooth. Like she'd rehearsed. I stood up. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. I went to the kitchen. Turned on the faucet. Watched the water run. As if the answer was in there. Then I said, "That was my sister." Pause. Who? I turned around. The woman you saw me with. At the cafe. That was Emily. My sister. Rachel went pale. Her lips parted. No words. She just sat down. As if something inside her sank to the bottom. For good. I watched. Calmly. Not with anger. The way you watch a sunset. When you already know. Night is coming. And for the first time, I felt. I didn't even want to ask who she was with. Because now it didn't matter. Because now she was out of frame. She didn't deny it anymore. But she didn't apologize either. As if hoping that if she stayed silent long enough, I'd forget. Morning. Rachel was still home. Sitting at the edge of the bed in the same sweater she'd fallen asleep in. Hair undone. Not dressed. Staring at the floor like she was trying to remember where it all began. She looked lost. Not guilty. Not remorseful. Just empty. I got ready in silence. No music. No conversation. I didn't make breakfast, not out of spite. Just didn't see the point. The house felt foreign. Only the shoes by the door still belonged to me. As I put on my coat, she said. Ethan. I froze. Didn't turn around. I don't know how it happened. Her voice quiet. Broken. As if she wasn't afraid of my answer. But of how it sounded now aloud. I didn't turn. I know how. You just didn't ask. And that was enough. She cried. But not like before. Not with sobs. Without a sound. Tears rolled down while her face remained almost still. As if her body was crying for her. I looked at the front door. At the scratch on the handle. At the creak in the hinges. And I knew. This wasn't her home anymore. It was just a place where my shoes still stood. Later, Emily texted. Are you okay? I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know what to say. I looked at the screen. At the simple letters. I care. And suddenly I realized. I couldn't explain it. How do you explain? That you did everything right. And still ended up being the one no one believed? Sometimes silence isn't the end of the conversation. It's the real meaning of it. I just stopped hoping to be heard. A week later, I rented an apartment. Small. With windows facing the courtyard. Where birds sang so loudly in the mornings. That for the first few days I woke up before my alarm. It had everything I needed. A table, a couch, a kettle. And silence. Silence where I didn't have to guess whether I was guilty. Rachel didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask if I'd taken everything. And honestly, that was enough for me. Emily helped with the move, brought boxes, arranged books in a chaotic but cozy order. And before leaving, she placed a photo on the shelf. We're 7, wearing matching scarves and ridiculous knitted hats, laughing wide-mouthed with a snowy hill behind us. So you remember who you are, she said, and left. No drama, no pity, just a tight hug like an anchor. I started living slowly, didn't reclaim old habits, didn't invent new ones, just existed, with boiled rice, and books no one judged for their half-read pages, with a quiet phone, and windows where light falls without demands. In that being, there was something unfamiliar. Silence without tension. Not the quiet before a storm, but the calm after one. One day, passing a bakery, I saw her. Rachel. She was sitting by the window. With someone. A man, maybe a friend, maybe more. It didn't matter. She wasn't looking at him, but through him, into nothing, or into herself. Our eyes met. For a second, I nodded. Not out of politeness, out of understanding. Sometimes people aren't enemies. They just couldn't be with each other. Now I don't wait for someone to read my intentions without words. I speak, directly, without wrapping it up. I choose the ones who ask before they judge, who aren't afraid to say, I don't understand. Tell me, if love comes back, it won't be a test. It won't demand proof. It will just sit next to me and stay.